Over the course of NASCAR history, there are some drivers that elevate themselves above the rest. These are what we call the legends of the sport, and are without a doubt the best who have ever done it. So today, we're going to be ranking the top 10 NASCAR Cup Series drivers of all time. Number 10, Bobby Allison. Bobby Allison debuted in the NASCAR Cup Series in 1961, but didn't have his true rookie season until 1967 at the age of 29. Allison's full-time career spanned from 1967 to 1987, where he collected 84 wins, the last of which came at the 1988 Daytona 500, and he won the 1983 NASCAR Cup Series championship. Allison also won notable crown jewels like the 1978, 1982, and 1988 Daytona 500s, the 1971, 1981, and 1984 Coca-Cola 600s, and the 1971, 72, 75, and 83 Southern 500s. Bobby Allison is also tied for fourth on the all-time wins list with Darrell Waltrip. Truly a legendary career. Number 9, Kevin Harvick. Kevin Harvick made his Cup Series debut at the 2001 Duraloop 400 at Rockingham, the race after the tragic 2001 Daytona 500. But Harvick would have a heartwarming win at Atlanta in only his third start that brought the NASCAR community together. But anyway, Harvick would go on to win 23 races with Richard Childress Racing, but he would leave RCR at the end of 2013 for Stewart-Haas Racing. And in their first season together, he would win the championship. Harvick would go on to win 37 races with SHR, bringing his win total to 60, good enough for 10th on the all-time wins list. Harvick also won major crown jewels. He won the 2007 Daytona 500, along with the 2003, 2019, and 2020 Brickyard 400s, the 2011 and 2013 Coca-Cola 600s, and the 2014 and 2020 Southern 500. Harvick was able to remain competitive all the way until his final season in 2023, but he failed to win in his final season, and his final win came in the year prior at that season's Richmond Summer Race. Number 8, Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch made his Cup Series debut in 2004 and went full-time in 2005. In 2005, Busch would pick up his first career win at Auto Club. Busch spent his first 3 seasons with Hendrick Motorsports, where he picked up 4 wins and made the chase in 2006 and 2007. But in his 2008 season, he would go to Joe Gibbs Racing, where he won 56 races over the course of 15 seasons, and won the 2015 and 2019 championships. At the end of 2022, Busch would leave JGR due to a contract dispute and would head to RCR, where he won 3 races in 2023, and as of this recording, he is 9th on the all-time wins list with 63 wins. Busch has also won notable crown jewel races, like the 2015 and 16 Brickyard 400s, the 2018 Coca-Cola 600, and the 2008 Southern 500. It is also notable that Busch is the winningest driver in the Xfinity and Craftsman Truck Series, where he won a championship in the Xfinity Series in 2009. Number 7, Cale Yarborough. Cale Yarborough would make his debut in 1957, but wouldn't have his first full-time season until 1965. In that season, he would pick up his first career win at Valdosta, but Yarborough wouldn't have his second full-time season until 1973, where he almost won the championship but ultimately lost to Benny Parsons. But in 1976, Yarborough would win his first championship, and in 1977, he would win his second championship, becoming only the 6th driver to win back-to-back championships at that time. But in 1978, Yarborough would do the unthinkable and become the first driver to win 3 consecutive championships. Now, while this record would later be broken by Jimmy Johnson in 2009, it is still an impressive feat nonetheless. Yarborough would win 83 races in his career, the last of which coming in 1985 at Charlotte, which puts him tied with Jimmy Johnson for 6th on the all-time wins list. Yarborough also won notable races like the Daytona 500 in 1968, 1970, 1977, 1983, and 1984. He also won the Southern 500 in 1968, 1973, 1974, 1978, and 1982. Number 6, Richard Petty.
What?
Now look, I can already hear everyone in the comments section criticizing this, but stick around to the end of the video and I will explain. So anyway, Petty would make his debut in 1958 at Toronto, but he wouldn't pick up his first win until 1960 at Charlotte. Petty would go full-time in 1960, and he would make his last start in 1992, with his best season coming in 1967, where he won 27 of that season's 48 races, which is a record, and won 10 races in a row, which is also a record. Petty would go on to have statistically the best career in Cup Series history. In 1,182 starts, 200 wins, 555 top 5s, 712 top 10s, 123 poles, 51,514 laps led, and he won 7 championships in 1964, 1967, 1971, 1972, 1974, 1975, and 1979. He also won 7 Daytona 500s in 1964, 66, 71, 73, 74, 79, and 81. He also won a Southern 500 in 1967 and 2 Coke 600s in 1975 and 1977. Number 5, David Pearson. David Pearson is one of NASCAR's greats. Pearson debuted in 1960 and picked up his first win in the next season in the 1961 World 600. Pearson raced until 1988, but he only ever raced in 4 full-time seasons: 1964, 1966, 1968, and 1969. And Pearson won 3 championships in his 4 full-time seasons. Simply impressive. Pearson went on to win 105 races, putting him second on the all-time wins list, and what a lot of people don't know is that in the races he and Richard Petty raced against one another, Pearson beat him in the head-to-head. And him and Petty finished 1-2 a remarkable 63 times, with Pearson beating him out 33-30. Pearson would also win notable races such as the 1976 Daytona 500, the 1961, 1974, and 76 Coke 600s, and the 1976 and 1979 Southern 500s. Number 4, Darrell Waltrip. Waltrip made his debut in 1972 but didn't go full-time until 1975, where he picked up his first career win at the Nashville Fairgrounds. Waltrip would go on to win 84 races in his career, which ties him for 4th on the all-time wins list with Bobby Allison, with his last win coming in 1992 at the Southern 500 in Darlington. Waltrip also won 3 championships in 1981, 1984, and 1985. Waltrip would go on to race until the year 2000 at the age of 53 before eventually moving to the Fox broadcast booth. Waltrip also won marquee events like the 1989 Daytona 500, the 1978, 79, 85, 88, and 1989 Coke 600s, and the 1992 Southern 500. Number 3, Jimmie Johnson. Jimmie Johnson made his full-time NASCAR Cup Series debut in 2002, and in his rookie season, he won in just his 12th start at Fontana, and later that season, he won 2 more races and became the first rookie to ever lead the point standings. Johnson would go on to become one of NASCAR's greatest, winning 83 races, which ties him for 6th on the all-time wins list with Cale Yarborough. The last of his wins came in the 2017 Spring Dover race. Johnson went on to win 7 championships in 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2013, and 2016, tying him with Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt for the all-time record. Johnson also had his fair share of success in the Crown Jewel races, winning 2 Daytona 500s in 2006 and 2013, winning 4 Brickyard 400s in 2006, 2008, 2009, and 2012. Johnson also won the Coke 600 in 2003, 2004, 2005, and 2014, and also won the Southern 500 twice in 2004 and 2012. Number 2, Dale Earnhardt. Earnhardt made his Cup Series debut in 1975 but didn't go full-time until 1979, where he won his first career race at Bristol. And then, in just his second full-time season, Earnhardt would go on to win the championship. Earnhardt would go on to win 76 races in his career, which puts him 8th on the all-time wins list. Earnhardt earned the name the Intimidator over the course of his career, just due to his lack of care on the track and his flat-out spinning and racing everyone tough. Earnhardt also won 7 championships in 1980, 1986, 1987, 1990, 1991, 1993, and 1994. And he also won some Crown Jewel races like the 1998 Daytona 500, the 1995 Brickyard 400, the 1986, 92, and 93 Coca-Cola 600s, and the 1987, 1989, and 1990 Southern 500s. Now for some honorable mentions. Bill Elliott. Bill Elliott coined the name Awesome Bill from Dawsonville with his 44 wins and 1 championship coming in 1988 and his chunk of notable races like the 1985 and 87 Daytona 500s, the 2002 Brickyard 400, the 1985, 88, and 1994 Southern 500s. Rusty Wallace. Rusty Wallace had a specialty on short tracks, winning 25 of his 55 career races on short tracks. Wallace is 11th on the all-time wins list, and Rusty also won the 1989 Cup Series championship along with the 1990 Coke 600. Lee Petty. Petty won 54 races in his career, including the inaugural Daytona 500 in 1959. Petty won 3 championships in 1954, 1958, and 1959, and was without a doubt the greatest driver of the pioneer era. Tony Stewart. Stewart started his Cup career a little late at the age of 28, but that didn't stop him. Stewart from 1999 to 2008 raced for JGR, where he won 33 races and 2 championships in 2002 and 2005. But Stewart made a career move to an owner-driver role and formed Stewart Haas Racing. From 2009 to 2016, Stewart won 16 more races and the 2011 championship, and brought his career win total to 49, putting him 16th on the all-time wins list. Stewart also won crown jewel races like the 2005 and 2007 Brickyard 400. Ned Jarrett. Jarrett only ran 6 full-time seasons from 1960 to 1965, and in this time span he won 50 races and the 1961 and 65 championships. In the early 60s, Jarrett was the only one who could keep pace with Petty, and it shows, as Jarrett beat him in head-to-head battles over this 6-year span. And number 1, Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon's rookie season was 1993, and he eventually went on to be one of the greatest, winning 93 races, which included 3 consecutive 10-plus win seasons with a 13-win season in 1998. And all of this puts him 3rd on the all-time wins list. Gordon would win 4 championships in 1995, 1997, 1998, and 2001. Gordon also won a good chunk of crown jewel races. He would win the 1997, 1999, and 2005 Daytona 500s. He also won the 1994, 98, 2001, 2004, and 2014 Brickyard 400s, along with the 1994, 1997, and 1998 Coca-Cola 600s, and the 1995, 1996, 1997, 1998, and 2002 Southern 500s. Now, before a lot of you go to the comments and rage about why I have Gordon as the GOAT, let me explain myself. Now, I am going to offer up 3 points on why I think Jeff Gordon is the GOAT. Number 1, longevity. This is a trait that I think is massively underrated. Gordon had a 23-season full-time career, never missing a race and being competitive for all of it. When Gordon reached his age 40 season, he was still winning races and solidly in the top 10 almost all the time. Now, a lot of people consider 2008 to 2015 being the downfall of Gordon's career, but to be honest, it really wasn't. While he did go winless in 2008, he was still really solid, and he was in the mix for plenty of wins that season, but just didn't get them. And he still finished 7th in points. In 2009, he only won 1 race, but he was in the mix almost all season and ended up 3rd at the end of the season. In 2010, sure, he was winless, but he was inside the top 5 in points for almost all of the regular season, but just had a troubled chase and ended that season in 9th. In 2011, he won 3 races, and later in the season, he was an outside title contender, and ended that season in 8th. In 2012 and 2013, he was down a little bit, but he still finished top 10 in both seasons and got 3 wins. In 2014, he was the single best driver for the majority of the season and was a title contender almost the entire year. And in his farewell tour, he was a solid top 10 driver all season long, and he managed to make the Final 4 and go out on top. Gordon had the best longevity in the sport without a doubt. Jimmy Johnson was simply terrible for the last 3.5 years of his career. Petty rode around for the last 8 seasons of his and doing nothing. And Earnhardt, while being solid in the later part of his career, he was not a title contender. I know a lot of people look at 2000 where he finished 2nd, but that season was largely finished 2/3 of the way into the season. Number 2, the dominant stretch. Now, every NASCAR great has had their dominant stretch where they look unbeatable. In the 50s, it was Lee Petty. In the 60s and 70s, it was Richard Petty and David Pearson. In the 80s and early 90s, it was Dale Earnhardt. In the mid to late 90s and early 2000s, it was Jeff Gordon. Then in the second half of the 2000s and early 2010s, it was Jimmy Johnson. Now, Jeff Gordon's dominant era spanned from 1995 to 2007. In this time span, Gordon won 79 races, which included a 3-season stretch of 10-plus wins, which at the time was something that hadn't been done since the 70s, and hasn't been done since. This stretch also included a 13-win season in which Gordon recorded a 5.7 average finish, which is a record in the modern era. Gordon's best season post-Ray Evernham was 2007, where he recorded 6 wins, 30 top 10s, and a 7.3 average finish. This to me is without a doubt the best dominant era in NASCAR. Now sure, Petty's era is better statistically, but Petty also raced in an era where there were maybe 4 full-time drivers, and back then there were also little to no rules, so he also probably had 100 more horsepower. And well, his dominant era really wasn't that dominant. Pearson consistently challenged him and beat him most of the time. In Johnson's era, most of the time when he won the championship, he wasn't even the best driver for that season. He just exploited the format and managed to get lucky and only be good when it mattered. Earnhardt's era was met with controversy. In the 1990 season, he was largely ridiculed because, well, Mark Martin was simply better that season. But he got a penalty that offered 0 competitive advantage, and also, when Gordon matured and started winning, Earnhardt was basically dethroned, and when they raced together, Gordon beat him a majority of the time. Number 3, the era. We'll start with Petty. Like I mentioned a minute ago, Richard Petty raced in the most uncompetitive era of NASCAR. Petty raced in an era of 45 plus races a year, only 4 full-time drivers, and Petty drove one of the best cars in the field, if not the best car. Johnson raced in an era of chaos and was largely guided by his crew chief, and most of the time wasn't even the best driver in his title-winning seasons. Now, Earnhardt largely raced in the transitional era of NASCAR, where the field was getting more competitive as his career grew, and then when the golden age started in the mid-90s, Earnhardt was basically phased out and never really contended for a championship again. Gordon raced in NASCAR's most competitive era and did all of his winning in it, and he was still a title contender towards the end of his career, and even in the 2000s when Jimmy supposedly took him over, he was still contending for wins and championships. Now, I'm going to explain why I don't think Petty, Johnson, or Earnhardt are the greatest of all time. I will start with Richard Petty. The main reason I don't believe that Petty is the GOAT is because he raced in the most uncompetitive era in NASCAR. An era with 4 competitive cars on the track, an era with 50 race seasons, an era with little to no rules and no official timing and scoring. Then, when the modern era started in 1972, sure, he was still competitive, but he was nowhere near as dominant as he was. Then, his longevity was almost non-existent. As soon as his age 42 season hit in 1980, he slowed down tremendously. He only won 8 more races in his entire career, the last of which came in 1984 at the Firecracker 400. But for the last 8 seasons of his career, Petty was irrelevant. He only scored 1 more top 10 points finish and just rode around for the rest of his career. And also, Petty ran a lot of his career just unopposed. And then when he was opposed, whether it was Ned Jarrett in the early 60s or David Pearson in the late 60s, and heck, even Cale Yarborough in the mid to late 70s, he was always coming up short when he was opposed by his competition. Now, Jimmy Johnson. Johnson was supposedly the guy who dethroned Gordon, but I don't buy it. Johnson, like I've said, was not the best driver for 4 of his 7 championship seasons. Johnson also had really bad longevity. Not a lot of people talk about this, but after he won his 6th championship in 2013, Jimmy's career went into a slow decline. His average finish regressed almost every season, and even though he won another championship in 2016, that season is statistically the 2nd worst championship winning season in Cup Series history. And after 2016, Johnson only won 3 more races in his career, and I know that his Pocono crash in 2017 probably accelerated his decline, but what makes this even worse is the fact that he went winless his last 3 seasons and only made the playoffs once. Then, when Jimmy Johnson did retire, so a quick post-editing plug here, but for those of you that are going to be confused by this next part here, so at the end of 2020 going into 2021, Alex Bowman's 88 team was actually rebranded to the 48 because Bowman was struggling with funding, but HMS knew that bringing Larson in would also be a sponsorship struggle. So they just had the 88 team rebrand to the 48, and Johnson's 48 team was rebranded to the 5 for Larson. The driver that took over for Johnson and then inherited the exact same team, Kyle Larson, turned this team around into a 10-win championship winning team. Also, Jimmy only ever really won with one crew chief, and that was Chad Canales. And a lot of people say that Jimmy was carried by Chad, which I think might be at least a little bit true. And lastly, Dale Earnhardt. Now to me, Earnhardt is very close to being the GOAT, but to me, he's just not. Earnhardt had a really great dominant stretch, but it ended when Gordon finally came of age and won his first championship. Earnhardt basically faded to just being a top 15 guy. Now sure, a lot of people bring up his 2000 season, but I'm going to be honest, I think it was a fluke. That season, the entire field was so inconsistent, and Earnhardt was just one of those guys that kept his car out of trouble, which is good, but he only won twice. Once in a very close nail-biter finish in Atlanta and a super speedway. Not really convincing. He also only led a little over 300 laps that entire season, which was on average only 10 laps per race. But the main point that I think elevates him more than anything, and is something I'm kind of reluctant to bring up, one of the main reasons everyone is so high on him is because he died on the track. Now, I'm going to bring up an F1 comparison. The rivalry between Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna is a storied rivalry within the sport. And in case some of you don't know, Senna was killed in an incident on the track. Now people look back on Senna as the better driver between the two because, well, he died on the track. But Prost, without a doubt, had the better career. He had more wins, podiums, and championships than Senna. And I think right now, we are seeing the same thing happen with Earnhardt. Now while Earnhardt does have more championships, he doesn't have more wins and doesn't have some of the accolades Gordon does. Now, I did not make this video to discredit anyone's achievements or downplay them, because at the end of the day, these drivers are the best to have ever done it. All I'm trying to do is offer my opinion on the NASCAR GOAT debate. Well, that's it for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below on whether you agree or disagree. Leave a like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for another video.